All right, welcome to a Walter Football mock draft for the 2022 season. Getting this started a little late here. It's a 12-team standard format. Joined by Jacob Camenker from the Sporting News. Jacob, how are you?
I'm doing pretty great. I'm excited to get a draft in with you. We just getting started right away. Dillon's got the number one overall pick. Looks like you and me are going to be drafting with not 8 other people and 2 computers. So couldn't quite get everyone in, but still a pretty solid group of people in there.
Yeah, for sure. It is it's the first week of August, so people's fantasy drafts aren't going to happen for a while. And so, yeah, I mean, we'll see what everyone picks as our first fantasy mock draft. So I'm excited. You're drafting third. I'm drafting ninth. And I shared the wrong screen, so you can see all my tabs open. So if you have OCD, you might be freaking out here by all the YouTube tabs I have open and everything else.
Yeah, that'll happen to you now and then, but looks like I'm already on the clock. We had Jonathan Taylor and Derrick Henry come off the board first. I'm going to be taking a running back here. I'm largely following the Sporting News rankings from our website and our great fantasy team over there. Going to make a couple of changes, though. They have Najee Harris ranked as their third overall in standard this year. I'm not as big of a fan of him at that spot, so I'm going to go with their number 4 overall player, Dalvin Cook from the Vikings. You know, you and I have both been like, oh, we're afraid of Dalvin Cook in the past, like he might get hurt, but he's stayed healthy, and he's been one of the most dynamic guys in fantasy and in football in general. So I'm comfortable grabbing him here. Maybe this is finally the year that he gets hurt, and I regret this, but I mean, he's just a do-it-all playmaker, so you can't go wrong with him in the top 5, I feel like.
Yeah, I feel like every I almost said every character, every player who's going to be chosen in the first round has some risk, or at least every running back. You can look at Jonathan Taylor, who is probably the consensus number 1, but they lost a member or 2 members of the offensive line, so it might be worse this year. Derrick Henry's coming off injury. Dalvin Cook has never played a full season. McCaffrey hasn't been healthy the past 2 years. Najee Harris has some question marks in the offensive line. So we have 5 players chosen already, and all of them have some question marks. And it was so different. Like think back like 15 years ago when LaDainian Tomlinson was the consensus number 1, and you had like Larry Johnson or Priest Holmes before him and Sean Alexander. Like these guys really didn't have any question marks. They would just score a ton of touchdowns. So it's completely different now.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I feel like this year, we've said this in the past where we're like, we need to load up on running backs early. I feel like because there's no certainty at running back, it's actually not a bad year to take a more balanced draft strategy. But I'll let you announce your pick because you are on the clock here. 3 receivers just came off the board. Now you're picking.
Yeah, there's a bunch of running backs I would consider. All of them have question marks. My favorite player of the 4 that I'm considering is, Joe Mixon, who's 6th on this list. I imagine, I wonder if there's a chance he would come back to me because I don't think people are as high on Joe Mixon as I am. But, in a real draft that I'm in, people are going to be looking at my rankings. So I wouldn't get him on the way back. So I'm just going to pick him. I love Mixon this year because he's going to have the best offensive line he's ever had in front of him. They signed 3 guys to improve their blocking. I know Lyle Collins is injured right now, but I'm sure he'll be back. So I think there's a legitimate chance Mixon could win the rushing title this year. I almost consider betting it when I was in Vegas. I didn't pull the trigger because I didn't think the value was there. But I love him this year. And, of all the running backs, I feel like he has the fewest question marks.
Yeah, I like Joe Mixon a lot, especially in standard. Like Austin Eckler just went off the board to Dillon, and I would have been torn between the 2 of them with that pick if this was half-point PPR or PPR, just because Eckler has such a high receiving floor. But Joe Mixon, he's been rock solid for this team. I mean, he was good last year. He's been banged up a couple times, but what running back hasn't been? And in that dynamic offense, teams are going to be focused on stopping Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Joe Burrow. They'll live with Mixon trying to beat them. So I feel like he is going to have a big year. So I really like that pick. That's one of the reasons I like picking late too, because you can still probably get a Mixon type there and still have a chance at one of the top receivers if you take a balanced strategy with your 2 late picks.
The 2 running backs I was considering otherwise came off the board here with Aaron Jones, Nick Chubb and Austin Eckler. So yeah, I mean, you mentioned Eckler, Chubb is another running back, and also Aaron Jones is the last of the running backs I was considering. So all of them are gone. So I will probably be going with a receiver with the next pick. But yeah, it's not a surprise at all that it's running back heavy. And I should say before I'm on the clock, before Dillon makes his pick, if you're drafting along with us, make sure you click high drafted players and also play alert notifications. It's easy to miss a pick because there are no noises otherwise, and you don't want to see players who are drafted already. It's kind of hard to sift through once you get to like the 4th or 5th round. So I guess we'll see who Dillon picks, and then I'm going to take the best receiver available.
Yeah, that makes sense. Again, like I said, I like the balanced draft strategy in the first few rounds this year. We'll talk about it when we get to it, but I feel like the running back depth in the 5th through 7th rounds is better than it usually is. But you're on the clock now. DeAndre Swift just came off the board.
Yeah, when I was making my first pick, there were 4 running backs I liked, and now there are 4 receivers I liked. I mean, you can go with any of them, really. I think I'm going to pick the one that's probably the least popular here. Like, there's some names that I would definitely consider. I'm going to take Mike Evans, though. I think he's going to have a huge year. Rob Gronkowski's retired. I know they signed Julio Jones, but so Gronkowski's gone. Chris Godwin's injured. You have Russell Gage. He's not really an end zone guy, though. So I think Tom Brady is going to really be focused on Mike Evans, especially with like Leonard Fournette also being overweight. I think Mike Evans is just going to be due for a huge year this season.
Yeah, in sporting news, we have him as our 14th ranked player, so you're actually getting a good value there. The only concern I see with Evans is that he's on the older side, but he's been so consistent during his career. And like you said, he's a red zone threat. He's a jump ball threat. So even if he slows down a step, he can still make big plays. So getting Joe Mixon and Mike Evans feels really safe for you, but also has a really high ceiling. So if you can start the draft with that, I would be all for it.
Yeah, you know how like there'll be games where Evans goes off and the next week Godwin goes off, and it's a nightmare for DFS really. But now Godwin's not going to play for a while. At least like we think he won't. I'd be surprised coming off a torn ACL like if he plays. So maybe that just makes Evans more consistent. So you're on the clock with your second pick.
Yeah, I'm a little bit bummed out. I was wanting to get Stephon Diggs, but he did not quite make it to me. Again, I'm using the Sporting News rankings here. So CD Lamb is probably our top receiver left on the board. I know some people might be turned off by him because he's not going to have Amari Cooper to take some attention away from him. But on the flip side of things, who else is Dak Prescott going to throw to? Michael Gallup is hurt. James Washington is hurt. Jalen Tolbert's a rookie. Dalton Schultz will be around, but he's on the franchise tag and isn't happy. So is that going to have an impact on him? It could. So I'm already back on the clock. That was very fast. I wasn't quite prepared for that. But so I got Lamb, and now I'm gonna look down this board and see who the best running backs or receivers remaining are. I mean, I think I'm gonna have a tough time passing on Tyreek Hill here. I know he's not gonna be the same deep play threat he was with the Dolphins, but getting him in the 3rd round, he's gonna get a lot of catches. He's gonna make a lot of plays, yards after the catch. Jalen Waddle's there, so teams can't exclusively focus on him. So getting him and CeeDee Lamb feels really good for this team. We'll see if I regret passing on a second running back, but I'm going to Hill there.
Yeah, I like the Hill pick. I've seen him go in the 2nd round, which I think is slightly too early, but I like him in the 3rd round. I like the Lamb pick a lot. He was one of the 4 receivers I was talking about, Mike Evans being the 2nd. Also, Devontae Adams is Stephon Diggs. The one receiver chosen so far, I would not have drafted yet is Deebo Samuel. I know he had a huge year in 2021. But with Trey Lance, it's twofold. One, Trey Lance, a quarterback, he's like every time he scrambles, that's a potential target or carry taken away from Deebo. And the second thing is the Niners have said that they're not going to use Deebo as much as a running back this year. So I'm concerned about his production fantasy wise. I'm sure he's going to be great in real life, but I wouldn't have drafted him in the 2nd round.
Yeah, I love Deebo Samuel as a player, but I tend to agree with you. If he was getting in a 3rd or 4th round range, I'd be like, absolutely, I'm going to take this guy. If he had been on the board at my pick in the 3rd round, I might have been like, hey, yeah, I'll take a shot on him. But it's that rushing floor really helped him last year. He had 8 rushing touchdowns. People don't realize that. They did build some rushing incentives into his new contract extension, but those don't kick in until next year. So that's not going to help him this year. And he basically said that he didn't like taking as many hits, or that's what was reported about him. So I think that it's probably best not to take Samuel among the top receivers. I think he's still a top 12 guy, but he's going in the top 10, usually number 6 or 7 off the board. So I agree with you on that.
Well, I was gonna just ask you about a pick here, but I am now on the clock again. So James Conner just went. I think that's too early for him. There's some major touchdown regression coming his way after scoring 15 times last year, and Arizona is just not going to be as good as they were. I'm torn between 2 running backs here, so I'm going to take Travis Etienne. So with James Robinson injured, and maybe he comes back, but Etienne is just such a big talent. He played with Trevor Lawrence in college. I just figure he's going to have a huge year in Jacksonville. They're going to use him a lot. I don't expect him to get like 1,200 rushing yards or anything, but I think he might get to like 70 catches. Like he's going to be like a huge weapon for Lawrence out of the backfield.
Yeah, he's going to be great. I'm writing a story about what Trevor Lawrence needs to succeed in his second year. That'll publish on Thursday at Sporting News. But basically, Travis Etienne is exactly what he needs to help bolster the running game and give him a legitimate target out of the backfield. All of the Jaguars' 4 combined running backs last year got a total, I think, of 59 receptions. Travis Etienne could easily exceed that and be more in Najee Harris 74 territory.
Yeah, I definitely think so. So I like him here a lot. And the other running back I was considering has not gone yet, so maybe I'll get him as well. It's interesting that 10 and 11 have both gone triple running backs, kind of defying your balanced approach strategy. We'll see how that pans out for them when we talk about, again, they all went triple running backs, 10, 11, and 12. So it'll be interesting to see how these teams pan out after going to running back heavy. I'm not really sure what the right strategy is because – like I said, this is the first mock draft I've done this year. Heading into August. So I guess we'll see how these teams pan out.
Yeah, it's good. We're going to get a nice case study. We'll look at all 3 teams, see if any of them look good, and then compare them to what I have at the front of this draft, and we'll get a really good look at everything and see if you can wait on running backs this year, or if you have to take the 3 in the first 3 rounds that I know I employed last year. I think you might have done that, or 3 in the first 4 at least.
Yeah, it was very running back heavy last year. And who knows, maybe that's going to be the right strategy, but I was taking the best player off my board. And unless Dillon goes quadruple running back, I'm going to get my guy. We'll see. Maybe he knows something that we don't, and running backs are very thin. Like I said, we'll find out. It's funny. Well, I said it's funny because computer. I thought that was a real person for a second. They went triple receiver. That's something I would not recommend. I think you should at least get 1 running back. And I'm on the clock now. And yeah, the other running back I was considering is still on the board. It's AJ Dillon. He had more carries than Aaron Jones, especially at the end of the year. And given that the Packers have lost Devontae Adams, that's such a high target share that's going to have to be distributed. You're going to see Aaron. That's why I like Aaron Jones a lot. He's going to get a ton of catches. AJ Dillon will. He'll get some work there as well, but he's still going to get a ton of carries. Like when Aaron Jones is catching a lot of passes, he's going to get the majority of the workload, especially in the red zone. Devontae Adams scored so many touchdowns the past 2 seasons. I feel like Dillon's going to get a lion's share of that workload.
Yeah, AJ Dillon, when I said the 5th through 7th round, there's going to be some good running back values. I love AJ Dillon. I felt like I was overdrafting him by taking him in like the 5th and 6th round of some drafts I've done, but I love him too. First of all, he's a BC kid, so you have to like him for that, but he's just such a powerful runner. And like you said, the Packers are just going to run the ball so much. They're going to use Aaron Jones as a receiver out of the backfield a lot too. I feel like they can use a lot of 2-back sets to keep defenses honest without losing too much in their receiving game. So I love the AJ Dillon pick as an RB3. He could end up being your second guy this year without a doubt.
And you're up again.
All right. So I was looking at J.K. Dobbins. Getting him in the 4th round would have been a nice value in my opinion, but he is gone. So now I'm going to have to scramble to find someone else because DK Metcalf was my backup. It's looking like Terry McLaurin is going to be the best player on the board for me by my rankings. And I'm in kind of a running back dead zone here, so I prefer to wait on that position and just take my top receiver here. So I'm going 3 receivers in the first 4 picks. Don't always do that, but hey, we'll see how it pans out. I have a good receiving core, so we'll see who my second running back ends up being.
Yeah, we went the opposite. You went 3 receivers, 1 running back. I went 3 running backs, 1 receiver. So yeah. I mean, I like McLaurin a lot. Like he's going to get so many downfield targets with Carson Wentz. I don't like Carson Wentz because we talked about this a lot. He makes so many mistakes, but he also he is a good deep ball. So McLaurin is going to get a lot of those passes, and it is an upgrade. So I definitely love your receiving core. So I'm curious to see who you get running back to complement the receiving core. There have been 3 quarterbacks chosen so far. I can't get behind that. I think, we'll see. I guess we'll see what happens. Maybe running back and receiver are deeper than we think, but I still think it's too early for these quarterbacks.
I waited till the 15th round of my 16-round mock to draft last year to take a quarterback. It did not go well for me, so I'm not doing that again. I'm not going to take a quarterback in the first 4, probably 5 rounds either, but I'm going to be more open to guys in the 6 to 8 round range than I normally would be, just because I think there are some really good values and scramblers out there that you can get, and getting a true QB1 I think is going to be important moving forward.
Yeah, you know how well, 2 tight ends.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I think that is a computer thing. I would not recommend that. You know how down I am at quarterbacks. I forgot to cross off Josh Allen, and he was on my list. And like in the 4th round, I was like, maybe I should take Josh Allen, and then I realized he was gone already. So you're on the clock.
Yep. I'm taking Damian Harris. So I was waiting on a running back. I was between him and Miles Sanders. I think Harris has a really good offensive line, and I think the Patriots are going to go run heavy this year. I know Mac Jones has made some strides. I know Devontae Parker's there to help him, but I feel like this offense is still built to run the ball. That's what Bill Belichick wants to do. So I'll get Damian Harris in the 5th round. I like Ramondre Stevenson too. That's my one concern, but I think because James White isn't going to be ready to start the year probably, or he's at least going to be recovering from a severe injury, and Pierre Strong's a rookie and Belichick tends to give them redshirt type years, I think both Harris and Ramondre Stevenson can be viable fantasy plays this year. So getting Harris as an RB2 is fine with me.
Yeah, I worry that that Stevenson's going to take his workload. Like, I mean, obviously they run a lot of running backs in New England habitually, but like, are you concerned that Stevenson's going to get more touches, or at least more touches than Harris, given that Stevenson can catch the ball better?
For sure, I think Stevenson is a threat to his workload. So I'm going to be watching closely in the preseason to see how each guy does. If Stevenson looks better than Harris, I might even flip-flop where they are in the draft rankings. Like, I like them both, but Stevenson has more upside, and you're on the clock.
I'm going to take DJ Moore. Was not in love with him earlier in the offseason, but the trade for Baker Mayfield definitely made me feel better about him. And he's been consistent in each of his seasons with bad quarterbacking. And now he's going to have Baker Mayfield, presumably. I mean, who knows? I mean, maybe Sam Darnold wins that job. I'm sure people have seen that ugly interception that Mayfield threw, but it was just practice. I'm sure that Mayfield will play better when it really counts. And if he does, I mean, Moore is going to have a good quarterback throwing to him. So yeah, 5th round, I like that. I was really hoping for Mike Williams though. He went way too late. I can't believe Keenan Allen went a round and a half earlier than Williams. I think that's insane.
Wait, Mike Williams was on the board. I had just assumed he wasn't.
Oh, really?
So, yeah. He's the 22nd ranked player for us at Sporting News in our top 200. So
wow.
That's a little bit too late for him, I would say.
Yeah. He was better than Allen last year, like I said, and that was not a fluke. Last year with the Chargers, their offensive line got better. So, Justin Herbert having more time in the pocket to find Williams. Plus, he had more experience, more confidence to throw to Williams, he's more talented than Allen right now. So yeah, I don't get that at all.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna bookmark that in my head, and probably in like, if that continues to happen, I'm gonna be looking like early 4th round range if I'm drafting early to take Williams there, because that's a steal.
Yeah, it definitely is. Amari Cooper is interesting, given that Watson was suspended for 6 games this year. You're going to have to deal with Brissett for 6 weeks, and I wasn't even that crazy about Cooper to begin with, so I don't like that pick. Allen Robinson is more interesting here. He was just chosen. I think he bounces back, but it's still a concern though. All right, so I'm on the clock again. I'm considering. I'm going back and forth between two receivers, and I think one of them might come back to me, whereas the other one may not. So I'm going to go with Courtland Sutton with Russell Wilson at quarterback. I feel like Denver's passing offense is just going to be so much better this year. It almost has to be. And Sutton had a down year last year, but he was coming off a torn ACL. I hate running backs and receivers coming off torn ACLs. Just we'll never draft them. But 2 years removed from his torn ACL, you're fine there. And I think Sutton's due to bounce back with a big season.
Speaking of torn ACLs related to the Broncos, Tim Patrick suffered one today, unfortunately.
Oh, I saw he went down. I wasn't home for the past couple hours, so I didn't know it was that bad. That sucks.
Yeah, I feel bad for him. He's been such a good receiver with bad quarterbacks. I was looking forward to seeing what he could do with Wilson. So, but the other side of the coin is now there's more targets open for Jerry Jeudy and Courtland Sutton. So they're a little more valuable because there's no, like, KJ Hamler might be the third receiver there now, but he's unproven. So stock up for those Broncos receivers and just like a hearty, like, get well soon, Tim Patrick to him.
Yeah, that's pretty rough. You're on the clock again after computer took second quarterback.
Oh man, yeah, the computer's having a tough time. There's one team with no running backs through 6 rounds, so that's not exactly an ideal situation. I'm looking at what we have on the board. I'm probably going to take another receiver here. I'm just trying to decide which one I want. Based off of the rankings I'm looking at, if I have time to do this, I think I'm going to take Amon-Ra St. Brown.
That's the other guy I wanted.
Yep. I love him this year. He's going to be really good for the Lions. He's going to get a ton of targets from Jared Goff. I mean, he had a breakout year. And DJ Chark, who was actually, I was looking at his stats today because I was looking at how he did with the Jaguars last year. He was insanely good down the field. That's going to open up so much stuff for Amon-Ra St. Brown underneath. So I love him as a fourth receiver value. And if this were a real league, I could possibly trade for a running back if I needed to.
Yeah. Well, you're up again.
Yeah. So this is another guy who I love in the 5th to 7th round range. Tony Pollard from Dallas. I mean, like, Ezekiel Elliott has not looked great last year. I think you can argue that Pollard was better than Zeke at times last year. I know the blocking in front of him is not as good, but is this the year that they look at Zeke and they look at Pollard and they say, hey, we got to get Pollard more touches? I think it could be. So I'm drafting him as like a third running back, top tier handcuff guy that will produce in a flex capacity that could have running back one upside. So I like him at this juncture. I'm curious to hear what you think of him.
So it's interesting. I don't know if I don't know if I told you this. I was talking to someone about this, but when I was in Vegas, I was looking at the MVP odds, and I saw Ezekiel Elliott was 300 to 1, and then I was looking at the rest of the sheet, and I saw Tony Pollard's name, and he was 250 to 1. And so I was like, he has better odds to win MVP than Ezekiel Elliott, which is interesting. I don't know if that was a typo. I'm sure it's not. I mean, these casinos know what they're doing. So I thought that was very telling, and it's a good harbinger for your pick. I love Pollard. I think he has amazing upside, and if Elliott were to go down, I mean, you have a guy who would, like, if Elliott were to get injured today or tomorrow, where do you think Pollard would go? He'd probably be a second round pick, right?
I think so. I think bare minimum, he could go in the top 15. Like, yeah. Granted, people love the Cowboys, so they're always going to be inflated a little bit. That's how it is when I draft Patriots, because my family's all New Englanders. But anyway, you're on the clock, so I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, I was considering Gabriel Davis. He is gone, so I will look to a player that we talked about a little bit earlier, Ramondre Stevenson. I think he's better than Damian Harris. I really expect him to take over the workload. Maybe, like, I feel like they're going to split the carries on the ground, but he's going to catch more passes this year, I think. Like you mentioned earlier how Belichick redshirts running back. So, like, with James White hurt, you have Pierre Strong, so he might be redshirted And so, like, who else is going to catch passes? Like, Stevenson's better at catching passes than Harris. And I feel like he could catch like 30, 35, maybe even 40 passes this year. And if so, I feel like he's going to have a great season.
So one of the things that I considered doing is if Pollard was off the board, I was going to take Stevenson in the 7th round and just have both Patriots back, so I'm protected either way. I know that may not be the most efficient strategy, but it's one where they're like both potentially viable. So that's one time where I'm pretty okay with doing a handcuff because one's value is not dictated on the other being hurt or unavailable.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so we were talking about Pollard, and yeah, I think he would definitely be a top 15 pick for sure. If Elliott were to go down, which running backs can go down at any point. I like Pollard's so explosive, so yeah, I'm definitely on board with that 7th round pick, and not on board with these double quarterback picks. Like we have 2 of them already, but both by the computer though.
The computer picking at 8 though has 2 quarterbacks, 4 receivers, a tight end, and no running backs. Like that team's gonna be hilarious when it's done.
Well, I don't know. It's 0 running back strategy, right? We'll see who they get running back at the end. And I am going to be up soon. My top 3 players, I should say, if you're drafting off my cheat sheet or whatever, they're all tight ends, which tells me that maybe I can get one on the way back, even though it's a while. We already have like 4 people ahead of me need tight ends, so there's a chance that they may get back to me, and so yeah, I'm just gonna ignore that position for now. I'm going to take a player with a lot of upside here. I think, yeah. So let's see if I can find him. Okay, Kenneth Walker's right here. So I love Kenneth Walker as a prospect. The problem is that Rashad Penny's in front of him, so he may not do anything for a while. But if he gets an opportunity, if Penny goes down, Chris Carson's already retired, so there's not going to be anyone standing in his path, and he could have a huge season. Like I said, he's incredibly talented as a runner. Not as good as a receiver as Breece Hall, is the other rookie, but if Kenneth Walker gets an opportunity, I feel like he's just going to keep it.
Yeah, I love Kenneth Walker. I love Seahawks running backs this year. I think you can draft either of them. It just depends on where you're drafting and what the value is, but they're a lot like the Patriots guys, in my opinion. You could draft one or both of them, and you'll just be set at the running back position, especially with the Seahawks, because we know Pete Carroll loves to run the ball. We know they don't have a quarterback. We know Rashad Penny was good last year. We know Kenneth Walker can handle a full workload like he did at Michigan State. So I think they're both going to get a lot of opportunities. And again, they're the guys that 5 to 8 round range now we're in for running backs this year seems pretty good to me. So I'd be happy to wait on running backs a little more this year than usual.
Yeah, you're up again.
Yeah, so I am looking at quarterbacks and tight ends at this point. So I'm going to take a tight end just because I don't want the computer to take all the good ones at this point. And Dalton Schultz is the one that I have left on the board. I just realized I made a critical mistake. I have 3 Cowboys. Oh boy. Oh boy, this is not good.
Well, that's what mock drafting is for, to make sure you don't make these mistakes. You're up again, I should say.
Yeah, well, Dak Prescott's on the board, but I'm taking Tom Brady. So I could have taken another Cowboy, but I think if I showed this to my boss in the fantasy room, he'd be like, "What are you doing taking all these Cowboys?"
Nice.
Brady should have a big year. His receiving core is better this year than it was last year. I know Chris Godwin's hurt, but he has more depth. And when Godwin's back, he should be really good again. And he loves to throw the ball. He's going to throw the ball. He didn't come back to run the ball. So getting Schultz and Brady, they're like 2 of the last top tier starters on the board. So I'm pretty comfortable with them at this juncture. And now I can spend the rest of my mock loading up at running back and receiver. Until we get to the defense and kicker portion of the draft.
The 3 tight ends I was looking at are all off the board. You took one of them, Schultz. He was my favorite, so I love that pick. Hawkinson and Goddard were the other ones. I wouldn't put Knox on that list. He was a little bit lower, but it wasn't. I don't think that was a terrible pick or anything. So I am on the clock again, and Prescott just went off the board. So I'm not even considering quarterback here. Well, there is one quarterback I should say I'm considering. No, never mind. He's gone. Aaron Rodgers is gone. See, that's how much I hate quarterbacks. I was going to take Rodgers here. Like, this is the spot I was going to take Rodgers, and he's gone. So I'm looking at a receiver. You mentioned him earlier. Let's see. I should probably type him in, see if I can find him. DJ Chark, the number 2 receiver now for the Lions. And I guess that could change later in the year because Jameson Williams might come back, but he's coming off torn ACL. DJ Chark put up great stats in Jacksonville despite having terrible quarterbacks. Jared Goff's not great or anything, but the Detroit roster offensively looks great. I mean, their offensive line, you could argue, is in the top 5. So Goff's going to have the best protection he could hope for, the best protection he's seen since the early Ram days, not his rookie year. And so, I feel like he's going to have a lot of time to locate DJ Chark here.
Yeah, I love that pick. Chark's such a good deep threat. People don't realize it because he was hurt last year and he's been often hurt since his 1,000-yard season. But he's a big difference maker, both in real life on the field and in fantasy. All it takes is like 2 catches for him and he can have a viable day. He can put up 70 yards on 2 catches. And even if he doesn't get a touchdown, that'll play in standard.
Yeah. So I'm on the clock again. I was actually going to take James Cook. He's off the board. So my later picks are reserved for quarterbacks and tight ends. I really don't like any of them. So I'm going to go with a receiver with a ton of upside. And I know you're not going to take him because you already have all these Cowboys. So I'm going to take Jalen Tolbert. And he's expected to be the number 2 receiver just because Gallup is out. I mean, he's coming off the torn ACL, and James Washington just got injured. He's going to miss 6 weeks or so. It's going to be Tolbert's job to be the number 2 receiver in an offense that's very high paced. So, yeah, I mean, Tolbert, I feel like has a ton of upside here in the 7th round.
Yeah, I like that pick at that point. I know earlier I said, like, who else is going to catch passes from Dak Prescott? But what it boils down to is more that Amari Cooper's gone, and they're going to use multiple people to replace him. Some targets will be siphoned to Lamb, some will be siphoned to Schultz. But then the number 2 receiver position is wide open. I feel like Tolbert can go out and take it right now. There's no competition because Michael Gallup's hurt. When he comes back, maybe they'll be a little bit more difficult to get him targets. But by that point, Tolbert might have established himself as better, and it's not like Gallup can stay healthy anyway.
Yeah, coming off the torn ACL, it's going to be rough for him. So you're up again in the 10th round now.
Yeah, I'm bummed because I was looking at Christian Kirk at this point, and he is off the board. I know he was overpaid like insanely this offseason, right, but he fits how Trevor Lawrence wants to throw the ball. So I thought that would be a pretty good option for me at this point. But instead, I'm going to have to go for another receiver. I'll wait for another running back to come back to me. Robert Woods could be a top 100 player if he's healthy. I know he's on the Titans. I know he has to play with Ryan Tannehill, but I think that getting him as my 5th receiver has a lot of upside. That way, if one of my guys gets hurt and Woods comes back and is healthy, it'll pan out pretty well for me. I know you don't like guys coming off torn ACLs, but at this point, it's a low risk move for me, so it's one I'm willing to make.
Yeah, it's the 10th round. I mean, this is the point where you start swinging for the fences. And yeah, I mean, you said playing with Ryan Tannehill. I was like, but I mean, he is going to be a starting receiver on a team that's going to have, I feel like, plenty of goal line opportunities because of Henry's running. So, I mean, Woods could pan out if he's healthy for sure. And you're up again.
Yeah, I'm looking over the running backs and trying to see which guys I like the most here. I think I'm going to go with Isaiah Spiller from the Chargers at this point. They like to take some carries away from Austin Eckler just because he's on the smaller side. He'll still be the main guy, but Spiller, he has a lot of upside. He could be in a few years their number 1 back. Justin Jackson's not there anymore. Josh Kelly didn't pan out. Neither did Larry Roundtree. So I'll take a chance on Spiller here. He's my 4th running back. So not the greatest 4th running back, but it's a swing for the fences. And Eckler, if he's gotten hurt in the past, and if he does, Spiller would be the number 1 guy, I think.
Yeah, I would think so too. I like Spiller a lot. I saw a stat on Twitter where like some guy was like, 4th round picks only have an 8% hit rate or something like that. And he was referencing Isaiah Spiller and like how early Spiller was going in comparison to other 4th round picks. But I feel like Spiller could have gone earlier in that draft. I don't know why exactly he fell to the 4th round. It seemed like he could have been a second round pick, or at the very least a third rounder. So I like that a lot. And in the Chargers offense, with that offensive line, if Spiller gets an opportunity, he's gonna have some big games. We saw what Justin Jackson did last year in his opportunities, and Spiller's more talented than Jackson, who's not even on an NFL roster right now.
Yeah, no, he's definitely more talented than those guys. So I like the upside. Looks like you're on the clock again, so I'll let you take it away.
I'm torn right now because I want to go with quarterback, but at the same time, there's another receiver I like. So I think he's available. Let me see. Yeah, Garrett Wilson's available. Like, why is Garrett Wilson still available in the 11th round? And the other first round receivers are gone. Not Dotson, but the other ones are taken. And Wilson is incredibly talented. I know he's playing with Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson was awful last year, but we talked about how Zach Wilson had just immense upside coming out of BYU, and it was going to take him a little bit to get acclimated to the NFL. He looked lost at times last year, but he should be, like, by default, he should be better. I don't know how much better, but he's going to be better. And Wilson is incredibly talented. I know there are a lot of targets in New York, but I don't know. I feel like Wilson is pretty good value in the 11th round.
Yeah, he definitely is. There are a lot of the rookie receivers lasted till that 10th, 11th round range. I feel like all of them, Tolbert, London, Olave, Wilson, they're all good values at this point. Like, I get it. I know, like, Drake London's not playing with a good quarterback. Chris Olave, we don't know how he's going to develop chemistry with Winston. We don't know how Zach Wilson will do this year, but they all have such upside. So I think at this point, they're good picks.
Yeah. All right. So we're in the 12th round right now. And so let's do it. I was considering this guy, Desean Watson, 12th round. What do you think?
Yeah, that's a good value at that point, because you can just get a streamer for 6 weeks, and now we know the suspension for Watson. So, I mean, you can argue all you want about how much the suspension would have been or should have been or what it ended up being, but he's 6 games. You can survive without him for 6 games on your fantasy team. You just got to stream when he's out, and I think you can pretty easily do that with the roster that you have. And there's always quality quarterbacks on the waiver wire. Like, Matt Ryan might not get drafted. You could easily plug him in for 6 weeks and he'll be fine.
Yeah, I mean, well, what I like to do is just stream quarterbacks. I talked about this before, but in one of my fantasy leagues, which is pretty competitive, I won a fantasy league a few years ago with Daniel Jones and Eli Manning playing all those guys in the playoffs, just because they had such easy matchups in those games. And that was like Lamar Jackson's MVP year in 2019. I think it was 2019. And I mean, I outscored, I think Eli Manning, who I played in the championship, almost outscored Lamar Jackson. It just goes to show you how important matchups are. And you can play them so easily with quarterbacks because, they're only 12 teams usually. And, probably like 10 of them, or maybe like 8 to 10, probably have second quarterbacks on the team. So there's usually going to be like almost half the league available as far as quarterbacks are concerned. So you can definitely stream quarterbacks.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I think that you absolutely can do that. If you do that, don't brag that you're not taking a quarterback till the 15th round, because people will double up on quarterback intentionally ahead of you. So that's never a good thing to have happen. Oh, Matt Ryan just went, by the way. So there goes that plan. But anyway, I just had 2 picks. Julio Jones was still on the board. I was kind of surprised by that. 12th round pick, that's a good value. I know people are going to be like, you have 2 injury-prone receivers in Robert Woods and Julio Jones there, but they're my 5th and 6th guys. So if one of them pans out, it'll be good. And Jamal Williams, I needed a good backup or 5th string running back for this team. Williams, he could catch passes out of the backfield. He's a true 3-down replacement if DeAndre Swift gets hurt. So I think I did decent at running back, despite, not taking the position as early and often as I usually do.
Yeah, I mean, Williams definitely has potential. Julio Jones is interesting. I wonder what he's going to do. Yeah, I mean, he's not that old, like he's not like people are making him out to be like 38 or something. Like he's what, 33, 34. Like he could have another 1 or 2 good seasons. He's not going to be what he once was, but like, in the 12th round, I think that's good. What do you think about Team 4 taking 4 quarterbacks? Do you think that's going to pan out? Probably not. Right?
I would not do that. I once had 4 quarterbacks on my fantasy roster. That was a bad year. It's not a good year. I can't explain why it happened, but it did.
So so this is my week 1 quarterback, Carson Wentz. He plays Jacksonville. Jacksonville's defense sucks. So yeah, this is who I'm streaming in week 1. I don't know who his week 2 opponent is, but if it's a tough opponent, I'm going to cut him and pick up someone else.
Yeah, Carson Wentz proved last year. He was a top 10, 12 fantasy quarterback for most of the year. And then the last 5 to 6 weeks, he kind of slowed down and was no longer good anymore. So I think getting him for week 1 against Jacksonville is a good bet, though. He has Terry McLaurin at his disposal, and then he has Jahan Dotson, who's looked good in camp. So I like that a lot.
Yeah, right. Feels like that should do well. Like an easier matchups at least. I'm surprised this tight end's available, Tyler Higbee. I know people have been burned on him, and myself included. But you have Robert Woods is gone. Odell Beckham's gone. I know this on Allen Robinson. But with those 2 guys are out. And Van Jefferson as well. He's banged up a little bit. Not that serious, but he might be out for a few weeks. Who's Stafford going to throw to at this point? I feel like Tyler Higbee could get a bunch of touchdowns at least earlier in the season. So I like Higbee in the 14th round.
Yeah, Higbee in the 14th round's a fine value. In terms of tight ends, he's a touchdown threat, so why not give him a chance? That's my thing at tight end. If you're not going to take one early enough that you're getting a top-tier producer, just find someone who can catch the ball and, in the red zone. Those taller dudes tend to do well, so I like that pick a lot. I am on the clock. It's defense time for me. I'm going to take the Broncos defense. They're playing the Seahawks in week 1, and they reportedly have been insanely good in camp, their defense. So sign me up for that all day, every day, even if the game's in Seattle.
Yeah, that game could get ugly. We've talked about that game, that there's some emotional component with Russell Wilson returning to Seattle, but Denver's defense they're very familiar with Drew Lock if he gets to start. And if it's Geno Smith, that's not much better. Or maybe worse. Who knows? That is definitely one defense I would consider. Love streaming defenses as well. I stream quarterbacks, tight ends, defenses, kickers. So yeah, I like that. And you're up again now.
Yeah, my kickers are flying off the board right now. So I'm going to do my classic strategy. Matt Prater is on the board. I'm going to take Matt Prater.
Can never go wrong picking Matt Prater.
You really can't, because even if his offense is bad, he can make a 60-yard field goal in an instant. So Go for it.
It's amazing he misses 35 yarders, but he'll hit a random 58 yarder right before halftime. And if you're betting against him, you're so tilted. He's
the most tilting kicker in terms of betting against him. But when you have him on your fantasy team, it's just I'll relax and get at least 5 points this week, which doesn't sound great. But when you've had kickers score -3 on you, that's much better than that.
That's definitely true. I always talk about maybe removing kicker from fantasy leagues, but I think it hurts people who are smart, because dumb fantasy owners will take kickers early. And I forgot for a second this is 15 rounds, not 16. So let me talk about the defense I would pick. I would be looking at Baltimore's defense here. I'll just take them. I'll just take Baltimore's defense. They played the Jets. I know that goes against what I said about Zach Wilson maybe being better, but when you have John Harbaugh with extra time to prepare, I know he's not a defensive coach, but Baltimore's team is always well coached when they have extra time. And going against the Jets offense, I think week 1 is a great matchup. And if I were to take a kicker, I feel like any of these guys are good. just take one, or maybe take this Gabe Brickich guy in Green Bay. So that is what I would do for kicker. Just ignore it.
We got Cameron Dicker, the kicker, in here too. That's Dicker, the kicker. He went to Texas.
Nice.
I'm ashamed I know that, but I do.
All right. Do you want to talk about your team, and then I'll do mine?
Yeah, I'll talk about my team. Yeah, I think this team came out pretty well. My running backs aren't the strongest in the world. I have Dalvin Cook, though, so all I need is one of Damian Harris, Tony Pollard, Isaiah Spiller, and Jamal Williams to emerge as an RB2 from week to week, and I should be fine. I like my chances of doing that. Early in the season, I'll probably rely on Harris, and, if Pollard overtakes him, so be it. My only problem would be if Elliott and Ramondre Stevenson end up beating out those two guys, I could run into trouble there. My receiving core is super deep and talented with Lamb, Hill, McLaurin, St. Brown, and then Woods and Jones are just kind of wild cards. We'll see if they pan out, but I like them enough to take them where I did. And then quarterback, tight end, defense, and kicker. I feel like I got a top 10 player at each of those positions. So I think I did a good job here. My one mistake was taking 3 Cowboys at running back, wide receiver, and tight end. I would not recommend doing that because if I have to start 3 of them every week, it's not likely that I'll win every game. You can have some good games like that, but generally stacking, you want to avoid triple stacks at multiple positions. If they're all receivers, it's one thing, but yeah, the chance for double points is eliminated if you don't have a QB stack.
Yeah, I mean, I like where you chose all 3 of those players. I like that a lot. But yeah, that is an issue. Like, you don't want to double stacking it like itself is pretty bad, but you can get away with it. Like, triple stacking, something you don't want to do. But like I said, it's something you learn with these mock drafts. I'm not even sure if I did that myself, but doesn't look like it did. Maybe so with my team, I went we talked about how you went 3 receivers, 1 running back. I went 3 running backs, 1 receiver. So obviously my running backs are going to look strong with Mixon, ATN, Dillon, and then I love Stevenson and Walker as high upside guys. But my receiving core I feel like is more interesting to talk about because I only took 1 in the first 4 rounds. Mike Evans I love, but then Moore and Sutton. I know they each have their question marks. If Carolina's quarterback struggle, Moore is going to have a down season, and then Sutton, he has to prove that he's healthy again. I've confidence that he will, but you never know. But with Russell Wilson, a quarterback, he's going to have a great passer throwing to him. So I feel like he's just going to rebound. And then you have, if they don't work out, I have Chark, Jalen Tolbert, maybe Garrett Wilson could take over. So I went running classic Walt going running back receiver in the first 11 rounds. And then a quarterback, I'm going to be set starting week 7 with Desean Watson, just have to weather the storm. But yeah, that is, I like my team for the first draft. I think this is pretty decent. So yeah, let's talk about everyone else's teams. We can skip the 2 computers. So Dillon at the 1 slot, he didn't take a receiver till round 6. So what do you think about this team?
Yeah, I think the receiving core is a little weak. Tim Patrick's in there too, so that hurts it. I mean, I probably didn't know that Tim Patrick tore his ACL today. It happened only a few hours before we did this. But if you look at the running back room, Jonathan Taylor is pretty good. Ezekiel Elliott, I'm not super high on, so that's a little bit of a concern. And then it's a bunch of handcuffs after that. Michael Carter, Alexander Madison, Hubbard, and Ingram. I'd be okay with that if he had better talent at receiver here, but doubling up on Kyle Pitts and George Kittle does not seem like a good move. I would not take 2 tight ends that early. I wouldn't take 2 tight ends at all in most cases, unless you end up in a situation where there's an insane value on the board and you can't pass on it. So yeah, I think having Josh Allen is nice for this team, and they're strong at tight end because of their 2 early picks there. But running back and receiver are 2 weak, so I don't think that I see this team being much of a contender, even if Jonathan Taylor does emerge as the number 1 fantasy player.
Yeah, I mean, you could play both tight ends at flex, and I've seen people do that. They've argued that before in my real drafts, and I always come away underwhelmed by it because tight ends typically are not big producers like receivers, and especially running backs. So it's not ideal at all if you have to play a tight end in your flex. You just don't want to do that. And even George Kittle in the 5th round doesn't seem great to me because of what I said about Deebo Samuel earlier. Every time Trey Lance runs, that's a fewer target for George Kittle. And, Lance is going to try to run into the end zone quite a bit. So Kittle is going to have fewer touchdowns than he normally does. And Kittle just hasn't been able to stay healthy. He always seems to be banged up for 3 or 4 games. So I wouldn't even take him in the 5th round, even if he hadn't drafted Pitts at 4-12. And then, the rest of the team, except for Taylor, just underwhelming, I think. Josh Allen, and I love Josh Allen, obviously, but second round's way too early. Like I said, I was going to take him at 404, not 212. Ezekiel Elliott, I'm with you there. Not a big fan. And then Thielen is a regressing receiver. To have him as your receiver one is bad. Like this looks like one of the worst teams. Not counting Luke Peters. This looks like one of the worst teams.
Yeah, I definitely agree. There's just not much upside there.
All right, so Dr. Bros, number 2, he went with the balanced approach you were talking about. He alternated running backs, receivers. Then he went with his quarterback in round 7. What do you think about this team?
Yeah, I'm going to say something that Kenny has said to me a lot when we've done 3-man drafts before here. But, I love this strategy, and he took some different players that I would not have taken at those spots necessarily. But I like the strategy. I like the approach, and I ultimately like the team in general. The running back room looks good. There's some risk in there. I like Derrick Henry this year. I know there's injury risk with him because he's had 1 million carries and was hurt last year, and his offensive line's a little worse. But in standard, he's going to continue to be a beast if he's healthy. So I think he's pretty much as safe as you can get at the position minus injuries. I like Gibson enough. I think that there's going to be a fire lit under him. But again, that's a guy who hasn't stayed healthy, and he has some competition in Brian Robinson this year. Miles Sanders didn't have any touchdowns last year on the ground, which was weird because Boston Scott and Jalen Hurts and Kenneth Gainwell had like 20 combined, I think it was something like that. I know the running backs had 12 combined and Sanders had 0. I feel like that's going to change. So positive touchdown regression makes him an okay value in the 5th round. Waiting until getting J.D. McKissick was interesting for the rest of the position. Receiver I find interesting as well in terms of, Debo has some risk to him. DeAndre Hopkins is suspended. Chris Godwin is hurt. So those are 2 of your top 3 receivers might not be playing for the first 6 weeks of the season. So, I mean, if they come back and they're healthy, this team's going to be a force to be reckoned with between them and Aaron Rodgers and Dallas Goedert at tight end. But there's a lot of risk in this team. So it's a great strategy. I think this team can be strong if everything goes well. But there's just a little too much risk in here for me to say, like, yeah, this is a definite playoff team. I feel like this is a real boomer bust squad.
Yeah, it's really dependent on Hopkins and Godwin, isn't it? Because otherwise, Samuel, Juju, and Chase Claypool are receivers. If Godwin turns out to be healthy, and if Hopkins, you can weather the storm with Hopkins and he comes back at 100% after suspension, you're looking pretty good at receiver, but like you're not going to have Hopkins for a while, and Godwin is coming off a torn ACL. So I don't like that. So I don't like the receivers. Running backs seem pretty good, I guess. And Rodgers is a quarterback. So like, I feel like between Rodgers and Derrick Henry and Debo and maybe Miles Sanders, and also I like Dallas Goedert at tight end. So like, this is a team that's going to be competitive and maybe make the playoffs. But there's definitely downside. Like, it doesn't seem like he has much depth. Like, if one of his running backs goes down, and during the Hopkins suspension, if one of his receivers gets hurt, like, he's going to be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. If the receivers get hurt, that team could collapse quickly, especially if Debo gets hurt, because then you're like, you have nothing at the position for a few weeks.
Yeah, you're right. All right, so you were team 3, Computer was team 4. Let's go to Pop, who's team 5. He did what I did, 3 running backs in the first 4 picks, except he took Kelsey instead of a receiver. Then he went heavy at receiver. We went 4 in the next 6 picks, and he didn't take a quarterback until round 11 with Derek Carr. So what do you think about this team?
Surprise, surprise. I like a team where they waited on a quarterback. Who would have thought it? Yeah, I like this team. Najee Harris, I was considering with the 3rd pick. I thought that Cook was a better option there, but, you can make the case for Harris as a top 3 player. So I like that a lot. The pick I don't like in the first 6 rounds is Montgomery. I mean, I see no upside with the Bears. I think they're probably the worst team in the NFL. Their blocking is bad. And yet there were rumors the other day that they might look to trade Tevin Jenkins because,
oh my God,
which is a terrible, terrible, terrible indictment of the what the team has done with him. I said it from the start. He needed to play at right tackle if he was going to stay on the outside. They played him at left tackle and it did not go well, and they had to sign Jason Peters to replace him. So anyway, there's so many problems in front of Montgomery. And then you got Khalil Herbert behind him, and the fact that Montgomery's only decent in general. So I don't like that pick, but I like J.K. Dobbins as a potential RB2. So I think in general, Pop's good at running back because Edwards-Helaire in the 7th round is decent value. Henderson, Gainwell, Tyrion Davis-Price, they all have upside. They all have path to carries, whether it be at the goal line or in general. Receiver doesn't have a top-tier guy, but Deontay Johnson, Brandon Ayuk, and Christian Kirk, they look pretty good to me. He also has Cordero Patterson, who's listed as a receiver on here, but I think he'll have running back eligibility in most leagues. I really like the Christian Kirk pick, though. I think he's going to really mesh well with Trevor Lawrence based off the stats I was looking at. So that's a good sleeper. No true number one receiver for this team, but the other positions look really strong. So I think they're a surefire playoff team based off the other teams in this simulation here.
Yeah, I think so too. As long as Dobbins is healthy, again, he's coming off a torn ACL, which I hate for running backs. So we'll see. I think he's a big question mark. So I'm not a big fan of that pick. I also hate the Montgomery pick. So he really needs Harris to carry his running backs because CEH may not get the full workload either. So if that happens and Dobbins is not healthy, Montgomery is just a plotter who gets 3 yards per carry. Like he really needs Harris to go off. But on the other hand, his receiving core I think is pretty good. Well, it's fine. I guess it's like above average, but he has Travis Kelce at tight end. Usually I hate tight end picks this early, but given that the Chiefs lost Tyreek Hill, I think Travis Kelce could have like 5 billion touchdowns this year. So like I feel like that could pan out. Like again, I hate tight ends in the second round, but if you're going to take a tight end in the second round, it should definitely be Kelce. So yeah, I think you're right. I think this is a playoff team. As long as, he gets something out of Dobbins and Montgomery, I feel like.
Yeah, and I like Kelce in the second round this year too, for the reasons you stated. I think you have to treat him a little more like a receiver. Like I hate when people say that about tight ends in real football, because I'm like, well, but he's a tight end. Like he's like, if you split him out wide, then he's just a slow receiver. But I think in Kelce's case, he's going to be the clear number one target for that offense, and it won't be particularly close.
Yeah, definitely not. Joey's team 6. So you took 3 Cowboys. He took 3 Saints. He took Alvin Kamara, Michael Thomas, and Chris Olave. So that aside, I really like the players on this team. I wouldn't have taken a quarterback that early, but I generally I thought he came away with some good talent. But like I said, you can't go with 3 players on the same team, I don't think.
Yeah, I don't think you can do 3 players on the same team. I say that having done that by accident, but this is actually a scenario where I don't mind that he took a quarterback early here because he's still loaded up on running back enough so that he had 2 top-tier receivers, or at least top-tier potential receivers, and Alvin Kamara, and said, all right, well, I can take Patrick Mahomes here now, and then took Kareem Hunt, James Robinson, both have starter upside or in situations where they'll be top-tier handcuffs that get carries. So, yeah, I like this team a lot. I think that this should be a pretty competitive one overall. I agree with you, though. I would not have taken this many Saints, especially it's one thing if they're from a top offense. Again, I say that having drafted 3 Cowboys, which is probably not a top offense. But, yeah, you got to be careful with when you look to trust those guys. If they're all Bengals, you'd feel good about it. But I don't feel great about that aspect of it.
So, I mean, I love the upside on this team. Like if Thomas can come back to what he once was, and Alvin Kamara avoids suspension, which is a big possibility. And if Nick Chubb goes down, Kareem Hunt there, and if Travis Etienne isn't what we think he is, James Robinson could bounce back. So I think this team has great potential, but they're like things could go wrong here, especially with the 3 Saints. So like I said, I like this team. Not great, but the next team 7 Zoe, I think this is the best team that we've seen so far. What do you think about it?
I do. Hilariously, though, they took 3 consecutive Bills in the 6th or 8th round. So I guess we had a lot of people triple up on teams that they like. But that's a good situation where you look at that and you say, all right, well, the Bills offense is at least good enough that I can say, all right, like this is an elite unit. Like this might pan out. Like maybe only stack 2, but yeah, I look at this team and I see a really strong receiving core with Kupp, Williams, Gabe Davis, Drake London as upside. The running backs, there are a lot of them. There are 7, so you can mix and match. Javonte Williams will lead the way there. But then, like, you're looking for an RB2, and it's James Conner, Elijah Mitchell, Devin Singletary, and a bunch of handcuff flyers. One of those guys is going to pan out. If they all didn't, that would be a horrible stroke of bad luck. So I like the approach that this team took. I think that they're they're strong at every position. And even if James Conner gets the negative touchdown regression like we expect, maybe he can still get yardage. Elijah Mitchell has some injury concerns, but hey, he was good when he was on the field. And Devin Singletary, finally, when they started to trust him, they've started running the ball a bit better. So, yeah, I really like what Team 7 Zoe did. They're probably the best team we've seen so far.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, the 3 Bills you don't want to do, but one of them is this his 4th running back. So, like, he's not going to use them anyway unless there are injuries in front of him. So, like, I can forgive that. You know, I think he's okay. It's not ideal, like I said, but like instead of Devin Singletary, maybe you take a James Robinson or Tony Pollard. Otherwise, I love this team. I feel like running back, they're stacked. I know James Conner, I'm not a fan of that pick because of touchdown regression, but he's going to catch a ton of passes with Chase Edmonds gone. And I love Javonte Williams. Elijah Mitchell is great upside in that offense. Cooper Kupp's going to be amazing. And I talked about Mike Williams already. Gabriel Davis as his 3rd receiver is I like that a lot too. And he's going to be the number 2 in Buffalo this year finally. So yeah, I like this team quite a bit. Computer's team 8. I'm team 9. Talked about me already. So we have 3 teams left. Dillon Federico is team 10. He's one of the 3 teams at the end that I mentioned earlier that went triple running back. So what do you think about this team?
Yeah, I like what Dillon did, and I'm not just saying that because Dillon follows me on Twitter and is a nice guy. No, I really like this. This is a good example of going triple running back where it works. I really like Eckler and Swift. I think that combination will lead this team to a lot of success. They're both consistent. They both catch passes. They both have high touchdown upside. Yeah, they both come with injury concerns, and so does Cam Akers, but you just need a couple of them to stay healthy, and you'll be in good shape as long as they do. The receiving core, I know you're a big Michael Pittman Jr. guy this year. I am too. And then you just go down the list, Allen Robinson, Brandon Cooks, Rashad Bateman. Those are like number 1 receivers with their teams, except Robinson, but he has the potential to be a top tier guy in that offense. So I think you're deep at running back and receiver with this team. I like it a lot. Jalen Hurts went too early for that. I would not take him at that juncture, especially not ahead of Lamar Jackson. I think Lamar Jackson is the better pick to have a bounce back year. I think he has a chance to win MVP. So I would have taken Jackson there. But aside from that, I can't find much to criticize. 2 tight ends I'm not a huge fan of, but, you know, Pat Freiermuth and Hunter Henry, like neither of them's a surefire tight end 1. So if you want to just hang on to both of them and see which one does better at the start of the season, I'm all for that. So I thought Dillon did a good job here.
Yeah, we were talking about earlier how we would see how these teams panned out going triple running back, and I think Dillon's panned out like wonderfully. Like I love this team. Jalen Hurts, I agree, is like the one like slight blemish, but I like Hurts a lot. And yeah, I would have taken Lamar Jackson over him. I wouldn't have taken a quarterback there overall, but if you do, I would take Jackson over Hurts. But I actually think Hurts can win MVP as well. I bet him to win MVP too. I think Jackson has a better chance though. But yeah, I would have gone elsewhere at quarterback. But yeah, I mean, in the 5th round, it's like not the worst thing in the world. It's not like going like if you took him in the 3rd or 4th round, that would have been terrible. But yeah, I mean, you made a good point about how he has a bunch of number 1 receivers, and his running backs, like they have question marks, but all running backs have question marks really. Like his all 3 of his guys could really pan out, and he could have the best team in this league for sure. So yeah, I'm a big fan of Dillon's team. Team 11, Futuran, they went triple running back as well. So how do you think they panned out?
I think, again, this is another team that went triple running back. It looks pretty good to me on paper. Nick Chubb and Aaron Jones, I don't think have as much upside as Eckler and Swift just because they have solid backups that could take some carries away from them, but you're still going to do well with them in your starting lineup. And Rashad Penny is a potential boom pick. If he starts the year, stays healthy, and produces like he did last year, look out. He could be a top 10 fantasy back. So I like that. I think the receivers, if this were a PPR league, I would absolutely love this team because having Keenan Allen, Jalen Waddle, and Hunter Renfrow would be absurd, and Mike Gesicki to boot. So this is a really strong team. I think the depth starts to wane after when they take the second quarterback and Kirk Cousins and then go defense and kicker early. But I like the Devontae Parker pick in the 14th round. I think Devontae Parker is going to be a good player for the Patriots. So overall, this is another good team. And it's just, I think, I don't know if this is so much they're taking 3 running backs here as it is. I like drafting at the end of the first round because you get so many top 15 players there. It's a good place to be in this year. But the triple running back strategy, per usual, is working.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the double quarterback and double tight end. If you do one, that's okay, not ideal. And obviously, with my situation, I had to go with 2 quarterbacks because Watson's not going to play for a while. But yeah, you don't want to go double both. It's really going to hurt your depth with the running back and receiver, which is very important. So I think that's one mistake. And 2 other errors I think he made. Well, first of all, he took 2 Raiders, Josh Jacobs and Hunter Renfrow. They don't they're going to conflict. So I think that's a mistake. And this is. As round 3 and round 4 picks, I was not a big fan. I really don't like Jacobs this year. You have Josh McDaniels in Vegas, and we know what McDaniels does with his running backs. He's going to feed the ball to so many running backs. So Jacobs is not going to produce what Feuderan wants him to do. And then Keenan Allen over Mike Williams. I think that's a big mistake. Mike Williams had produced Keenan Allen last year. If this is PPR, maybe you could make a case to take Allen earlier, but in standard, I would definitely go Mike Williams.
Yeah, I agree with you. I keep forgetting that Mike Williams was on the board. I just couldn't believe that. So yeah, no, I would take Williams before Allen, and Josh Jacobs I'm out on. I ended up with him last year in my main league because I had to trade. I had to trade Clyde Edwards-Helaire for Matthew Stafford and Josh Jacobs, which was a great trade on paper, but Josh Jacobs ruined my league. He was just every week I'd be like, I need 7 points from Josh Jacobs, and he'd come over 5.6, and I'd be like, you're not even close. Come on, man.
Yeah, this is a classic 18 carries, 56 yards for Josh Jacobs. He's not even going to get that this year because of Josh McDaniels being there. You're going to have Brandon Bolden stealing touches. Amir Abdullah is going to steal touches. Zamir White, Kenyon Drake, all these guys are going to take carries away from Josh Jacobs. And you're going to be very frustrated. So I would stay way away from Josh Jacobs in the 3rd round. All right, let's get to the 12th team, aptly named 12. They also went triple running back, and they took the quarterback you mentioned earlier, Lamar Jackson. So what do you think about this team?
Yeah, I really like the T. Higgins and Lamar Jackson picks. I think those were fantastic. Getting T. Higgins as your number 1 receiver in the 4th round, I know he's not the number 1 receiver on his own team, so some people will be scared away by that, but they're really a 1A and a 1B between Chase and Higgins. That Bengals offense is just absurd. And I think Lamar Jackson's going to be super motivated by all the hate he's gotten this offseason for no real reason. And he's entering big time contract negotiations. So he's going to want to just put up a great season that'll be all right, well, we have to give him what he wants here. So there's a lot going that I like Jackson. And, he's coming off a down year and he's a good competitor. So I like that from that standpoint. The rest of the team, I'm not a huge fan of it. Darnell Mooney and Alan Lazard look like solid value picks. So does Treylon Burks. I like Albert Okwuegbunam now that Tim Patrick is hurt. But I look at the 3 running backs that were selected, and I'm more wary of these 3 than the other teams with 3 running backs in the 1st round that we just discussed, because Barkley, I think, should bounce back this year, but he hasn't been able to stay healthy, so there's concern there. Leonard Fournette showed up to camp supposedly overweight, and then Todd Bowles was downplaying it. So we'll see if that ends up not being as big a deal, but I'm always worried when running backs show up overweight because it just creates injury-prone situations and situations where they're not as fast as they need to be. And Breece Hall looks great on paper, but he's a rookie and he plays for the Jets, so we kind of have to see how that's going to work before anything else. That if Zach Wilson doesn't take the step forward, teams are going to be able to key in on Breece Hall and really make his life difficult. So it's a risk in the 3rd round. It's one that could pay off, but I think that of the 3 running back teams, I think it's the weakest. I don't think it's a bad team, though. I think this could easily pan out. I would not take 3 tight ends in any situation in any fantasy league, though. So I'd recommend not doing that. And if you take Lamar Jackson, you probably don't need to take Trey Lance unless you can do a stash and trade late if you got an upside quarterback and you have morons in the league like me who are like, I could draft a quarterback in the 15th round and be fine. If you do that, if someone in your league's doing that, feel free to do it. But otherwise, I would just stick with Lamar. And if you need a backup, just troll the waiver wire.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I talked about how you shouldn't go double quarterback and double tight end. He went double quarterback and triple tight end. So I would not recommend that. Like you can't use your third tight end in a flex. So definitely no reason to do that. Otherwise, yeah, I like this team. I mean, Barkley could really pan out. He has, again, question marks, but like which running back doesn't? Fournette has, I think, greater question marks because I think you made a good point about his weight. It could lead to injuries, like you said. And then Brees Hall is we don't know what we're getting out of Brees Hall. He could be amazing, or he could just be a draft bust. He was not taken in the first round for a reason. But I like this team. I like the receivers, Higgins, Cooper. We question though. Because he's not gonna see Watson until week 7. And then you have Darnell Mooney. I'm not crazy about Alan Lazard. I guess the 8th round's okay, but he has such trouble getting open, and now he's not gonna have Devontae Adams taking attention away from him. He's gonna be seeing number 1 receivers unless like Romeo Doubs or someone else steps up. So I'm pretty down on Lazard, but like I said, 8th round's not that big of an issue. But yeah, what you said about quarterbacks definitely a point. Like Lamar Jackson is great. And to get him in the 5th round, I think it's a little too early, but he still took him in the 5th round. But Trey Lance, like he's just going to rot on his bench. I guess he can trade him, but it's tough to trade quarterbacks because there's so many like decent ones. Like even I who drafted didn't draft the quarterback until round 12. I would have no interest in Trey Lance, I guess, unless I got like a great deal for him because I know Watson's going to come back early and I could just stream. So you have like stubborn people like me in fantasy leagues who are not going to trade. So I just think that's a mistake. Like unless he thinks Trey Lance could be a top 5 quarterback this year, I would not have made that pick.
Yeah, I think a lot of people see in Trey Lance what people saw in Patrick Mahomes, where they were like, oh, this guy's got all the raw tools and talent to put it together. But there are a lot of questions like, well, is he ready for this starting job? So I think that's why Lance is going to so many teams as a backup quarterback in fantasy. But yeah, no, I tend to agree with you. I would not take 2 quarterbacks if you can help it. Again, unless you're in a situation where someone waits so long that you just take literally almost every startable quarterback on the board. Even then, there will still be guys you can play. Yeah, it takes a really, really special type of owner to end up with Ben Roethlisberger as your quarterback in fantasy when his arm is about as strong as a wet noodle.
A funny story about that real quick. 2 years ago, I was in a league and I was like you. I waited to quarterback for super long, and my friend John noticed this. And John, he took Matt Ryan in like the 4th round or something. It was like I thought it was like one of the worst picks I've seen because like Matt Ryan on the decline, like that was way too early. And like we were like, my friend Dave and I were like looking at each other like, Matt Ryan 4th round, like what is he thinking? But anyway, John saw that I had no quarterbacks and like Josh Allen was still there, and I love Josh Allen as a sleeper, and I knew he was going to fall to me. And this is like the 13th round, and so John, but the pick right before me, he takes Josh Allen, and so like if I had Josh Allen that late, I would have won the league. And it's funny because he got Josh Allen, and he started Allen like the whole year after like week 2, and so he didn't even need Matt Ryan. And I don't think he won the league because his depth was shot because he drafted Matt Ryan. So like my point here is that like, if Team 12 loves Trey Lance so much and it's like, okay, you're going to take him as my second quarterback, then don't draft Lamar Jackson. Then you don't need him at that point. Just go with another receiver or a running back. I would not just double up in quarterbacks unless it's like Desean Watson or something.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I generally take one quarterback. I think the times I've had the best teams, I've drafted quarterbacks in the 8th through 10th round. You can wait longer, but you really need to have the right sleeper, like your Josh Allen in that circumstance. My biggest regret was the year that I did not take Aaron Rodgers in, I think, the 9th round. That was just 2 years ago, and he won MVP because everyone was super down on him. And I'm like, no, he's going to have a bounce back year. And I got him in so many of our mocks that year. And then I just did not end up with him on draft night. And I was like, why did I do that? Like I drafted him all the time. So just stick with your guts, with your gut at quarterback, and just take your guy where you want him, but don't take a second guy unless you really need to protect something like Walt said, if you have Watson, or if you end up with a guy that's like, all right, well, he's got a little bit of an ankle thing. We don't know if he's going to be ready for a couple weeks. If that's a top tier guy, then you can take someone just as a buffer for that. But even still, that's not that big of a deal. You can get good streamers anywhere. Derek Carr was a streamer last year, and now he's being drafted in the 11th round.
Yeah, you're totally right. You can get streamers anywhere for sure. Team 7 looks great. Yeah. So I was afraid to zoom in. Now you have like infinite like screens here. That's why I wasn't showing chat. I was stupid and I didn't show another window, which I'll remember to do next time. So like next week, I figure we can do a PPR league, and then the week after we can do half PPR, and then we'll figure something out for the 4th week of the preseason. So yeah, it was fun doing a fantasy draft. I'm definitely looking forward to the next one.
Yeah, me too. Let's hope we get better at drafting and I don't take too many Cowboys next week.
Nice. All right. So please hit like, subscribe, comment below, share this video. Visit the link in the description for the merch store. I'm wearing a Walter Football t-shirt. I would have done this earlier, but I was panicking because I forgot to share the right window. But Jacob, do you have anything to plug?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Jacob Camenker. I will tweet my thoughts on football throughout the season. I will also occasionally dabble in Boston sports and golf talk there. So if you have any questions to me, you can shoot them my way. If I see them, I'll answer them. I've got plenty of football stuff coming up at sportingnews.com. Obviously, we're diving into the preseason these next couple weeks. First game's on Thursday, believe it or not, the Hall of Fame game. I know it won't be that big of a deal, but I'll have some content about the Jaguars coming out on Thursday. So keep an eye out for that. Just some statistical breakdowns of what the Jaguars could do to build around Trevor Lawrence. So yeah, check out sportingnews.com and follow me on Twitter. And yeah, let's enjoy this football season. I'm glad it's here.
You know what? I'd be more excited for the Hall of Fame game if I had any confidence that we see Trevor Lawrence at all. I feel like it's going to be like Jake Luton for 3 quarters, so I'm not like looking forward to it. But it is still football, I guess, and you could bet on it. I'm not sure if I will. But anyway, I'm at walterfootball.com. Tons of fantasy content, updated rankings, cheat sheets, sleepers, busts, value picks. You can get that all there. Updated my 2023 NFL mock draft today for the Dolphins suspension, their forfeited first round pick. And Charlie has his updated mock draft. Tons of draft content already. We've graded some signings recently, and all of our season previews are up too. So check all that out at walterfootball.com. But I will talk to you next week for our next mock draft.
All right. Sounds good. Talk to you then.
All right. Bye.